You're everywhere. We saw you at House of Glory last week against Mike Santana. Obviously, made your MLW debut. In-ring debuts coming up at Fightland this week. Talk to me about how this opportunity with MLW came up. I know it was a surprise thing, but how long was it in the works?
I I guess there's a few tiers of it. One of the first people to email me just in general on June 27th when I first made that sort of public announcement with the letter that I wrote, which obviously had my booking information on. I'd say within an hour or two, I got an email from Court Bauer um, from MLW. And I'll be honest, I got hundreds of emails that day and probably close to 1,000 within, the weekend. So I didn't get immediately back to him just because I was sifting through so much and I needed to kind of uh, respond as much as possible to interview requests and time sensitive things first. I think within a few days I got back to him. Um, and it was about I don't remember the exact context of it, but it was about like one specific date, and then there was a little bit of a game of phone tag, not with a phone, but with email tag, I guess. And so we were just kind of going back and forth about that one date, and then I think something came up that interfered with that date. I don't remember the specifics about it, but we kind of just left it at that for about maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I don't remember the exact timeline of everything, but then relatively close to the show that I went to in New York City, I'd say maybe 2 weeks out for that
Mhm.
from that, maybe give or take a week, somewhere in there. I was contacted by MSL Saint Laurent, and that's when the first sort of conversation about like actual sort of character stuff and booking and things like that came into the discussion. So that was the first time where I kind of got a sense that, oh, this is a more serious opportunity as opposed to just kind of like a one-off, which is fine. I've nothing against a one-off. I've been doing
Yeah.
tons of them.
Been doing it all,
You know,
right?
House of Glory that you just mentioned, for all intents and purposes, was a one-off. It's just it's part of the business. I like to go places and show up and do and not but not totally lock in a bunch of dates in a row just because it's there's pros and cons to that sort of dynamic. So that was the first time where I got a sense that they were really interested in me as an asset to their company. And I was like, okay, if they're willing to invest intellectual property into me, then I'm going to invest my time and effort into them. And that's when we started to get a little more serious about what direction it was heading, what their vision was for me, how I envisioned myself, what I could offer to MLW, what MLW could offer to me. And then we started talking about dates and business and things like that, and we were able to work out an agreement, and it's so far so good. I've been very happy with everything. The first show that I showed up to, right off the bat, I could tell that there was an invested interest just because there was lots of we did a lot of pre-production, promos with interesting backdrops and things like that, stuff that hasn't come out yet. I talked about this in another medium. Um, I don't remember exactly where, but I'll mention it here too. I was super impressed with. We did some quick sort of B-roll footage just in front of like a green screen and some stuff in front of a backdrop of just me kind of walking around and looking intimidating and stuff like that. And then we're like, cool, okay, all set. I'm gonna go, finish getting ready for my run-in thing.
Mhm.
In that like 1 hour period, uh, the 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 Doomsday thing happens, and then the music hits, and there's already a a, a, a well-produced video, like an entrance video of me walking around looking tough with the footage that we had just filmed like on the roof, like 45 minutes earlier. And to me, I was like, wow, that's an
Really impressive.
extremely quick turnaround time for something that looks visually this impressive. I was just, as I'm walking out, I'm kind of like, I'm trying to look, play the part of the character, but out of the side of my eye, out of my uh behind my sunglasses, I'm looking at this video. I'm like, they just made that video. Like that, this literally just happened. So I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And it's little things like that that say to me, okay, there's a vested interest here.
Hmm.
It's not just because in the world of pro wrestling, you'll hear all sorts of things. I've heard things from Ring of Honor, from WWE, and sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. And you get used to that idea as a professional wrestler. I've been doing this 12 years now, and you get very comfortable hearing things and taking everything with a grain of salt.
Hmm.
Okay, sure. You think that I'm going to be a valuable asset. Okay, sure. And then you hear that and you go, okay, let's see if they practice what they preach. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And that's just the nature of the business. Again, I'm not holding this against anybody. It's a very volatile sort of business where things change and plans change. I know that's the catchphrase is plans change, but that's the reality, and I accept that as a business person, which is why I don't emotionally invest into everything that's ever told to me. Because if I do, I'd lose my mind. You see it all the time with pro wrestlers. Pro wrestlers just have these public tirades and meltdowns all the time because they're told one thing and something else happens, and that's frustrating because you emotionally invest in it. I've had that happen to me enough times where I no longer emotionally invest into anything that anybody tells me. I will put my 100% into something where I'm seeing a reciprocation, and that's what I'm seeing now. That's what I'm seeing from MLW. I'm seeing that in emotional investment. I'm seeing that business investment. So now I'm diving head first because I want to reciprocate that tenfold because that's how my mind operates. If someone's going to invest in me, then I'm going to put all of my time and energy into promoting that and making it as valuable as I possibly can.
Yeah. And I saw another interview. I think it was Fox News. You said your interview was flawless, or I'm sorry, your introduction to MLW was flawless. Is there some way that, because I'm not going to ask you to review that if it's already, you already have your opinion of how it came off, but
Yep.
moving forward, is there another way you want to redefine yourself? Because if we already got the first impression and you're happy with it and MLW is investing in you, like there's this positive synergy going on right now, is there another way you want to redefine yourself? Maybe in the way fans have viewed you in the past few years versus what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so that's it's a very good question. And I'll approach it from kind of a two-tiered sort of response. I'm always looking to sort of reinvent myself in a sense. I never want to stay stagnant. I never want to be kind of the same thing for too long.
Mhm.
I've always kind of seen that from guys like Chris Jericho and Matt Hardy, who just even though they're already doing well, they consistently reinvent themselves. And I'm like, wow, that's a really good strategy for professional wrestling. The part of it that I'm balancing right now is that I don't think anybody's gotten the full experience of what I wanted to present this current rendition of my character as.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody's gotten that yet. I had a vision for this character and I presented that vision to NXT and Shawn Michaels, and it started with Vince McMahon and I presented it to him, and I've presented it to Triple H. Everybody across the WWE system got my vision in some form or some capacity. It never fully came to fruition. There were parts of it, like I said, sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. Plans change. I get it. I'm not holding this against anybody. It's the reality of what happened. Right now, I want my full vision to be presented, and so far so good.
Mhm.
So in a sense, yes, it's a reinvention in the sense that no one has seen this full presentation yet, but in another sense it's always been there in my mind. I've always wanted it to be, all by always I mean for the past 2 years or whatever, but
Mhm.
I've been trying to sort of project it, and it's been coming out in bits and pieces, and nobody's gotten the full package yet. Now in MLW, I think everybody's ready and interested and going to experience the full package. And I'm super excited about that. And once that happens, there's going to be layers built onto that. We're already adding bits and pieces, right? Like the managerial portion of it was not something that I had envisioned, and now it is. And now I'm diving headfirst into that because that's something that was given to me. And I think that that's super creative and it's a new dynamic and it's something that I can totally invest in. I've had these conversations with both MSL and Court about how I that's the most intriguing part of this presentation to me, right? I know what I want to bring to the table and how I want to present that. But in terms of a new piece of it, when you can tell that story, that dynamic between two characters and how they interact with each other and how they came to be, that's a story that I think is super captivating because it's a brand new piece to the puzzle. And that's the kind of stuff that fans can really sink their teeth into. So I'm always thinking about what's next, what's the next part of it. Here's what I want to present, but how do we build onto that? And that's kind of how I approach sort of a quote unquote reinvention
Mm,
process with my presentation to fans. And a big piece of that is my ability to communicate, right? Because
mm,
I've always felt strongly about my promos. I've always felt strongly about my in-ring, vignette, backstage stuff. And this was something that I expressed to NXT, and they did a very, very good job with the vignette portion of it. I got
yeah.
tons of vignettes, tons of pre-produced sort of the tape recorder and all that stuff with the lights, and I loved it. I was so happy with all that stuff. What I wanted more of and what I pushed for more of, and I got again bits and pieces of it when it presented itself was the in-ring microphone
Mm.
portion of it because that piece of it was started to come more and more toward the end. But I always wanted that to be a focal. I want everything to be a focal point, right? The more vignettes, the more in ring, the more wrestling pay-per-views, stuff like that. I wanted all. I wasn't shy about telling WWE that I wanted to be a top guy, right? whether
If
whether they
you
saw
don't
that
want
vision
to,
or
why
not
are you
is
there? Right?
right. Right. It is that's the debatable portion of it. But I've always felt that I want to be a top guy. I want to have the as many things put on my shoulders as possible. And now I feel like I'm getting that opportunity with MLW. I mean, they started me off with an in-ring promo. We've already filmed vignettes. We've already done the presentation with the manager and the storyline and the visual aspect of it. To me, it's firing on all cylinders, and I'm super excited about it.
So like, is there any percentage of this, like specifically you talking about wanting to add more in-ring stuff? Is any of this because I mean, I'll say a good amount of people, like they saw you doing in-ring stuff with Retribution. Like, is that any of that trying to maybe refocus on like Dijak instead of T-Bar? Because you've used that whole experience to your advantage, good and bad parts of it. Like you've had some fun with it on social media. It kind of got a mixed response from fans at the time, but
That's generous.
I mean, I didn't really care for it as it went on longer, but
No, I didn't either.
I'm just like,
You know what I will say though, just to interrupt, and I'll let you finish your
yeah,
question. I think a lot of people misconstrue what I say about my opinions about Retribution and think, oh, he didn't care, he wasn't invested.
mm,
I'll say this as many times as I possibly can, and I'll say it about everybody in the group. Nobody was more invested in Retribution than we were. We desperately wanted to make that work. I shaved my head. I had contact lenses. I figured out different ways to paint my face. I thought of a new voice. I was trying to change my teeth. I spent thousands of dollars on gear. Again, it looked plain and whatever, but I was like burning it. I was doing these things. We were adding patches. Brennan, whose mace was designing the logo. We were pitching things constantly about here's our motivation. We wanted nobody wanted to make this work more than us. We dove headfirst into it and we gave it 1,000%. And we were just pushed back upon a lot.
yeah.
We were handcuffed a ton when it came to Retribution. So even though in the middle of it, we all had, we're all not we're not blind to the fact that a lot of this was silly, right? Like I didn't hear the name T-Bar and go, "Oh wow, nailed it, T-Bar." But at the same time, I knew that was coming from Vince McMahon, and I couldn't go to him and be like, "What about this name instead?" Because then he's going to go, "F this guy," get him out of here, right? So it's this checks and balances system where we're doing our best to take something and say, okay, T-bar, I can make that work. If I do this, I can do that. Even though it sounds terrible, what if we do this? What if I'm a maniac? What if and we knew that if we were allowed to, we could make this good. The reality is we weren't really allowed to. So from that aspect, now I'll let you finish your question. I don't want the misconception because I know that there's a misconception that
Yeah.
I thought Retribution was stupid, so we threw our hands up in the air and gave up. We did not. We did the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, obviously the effort was there, but I guess my main point was how much of your desire to focus on the in-ring promo aspect that you just talked about, is any of that a response to those opportunities you had with Retribution? Because it was almost limited in a way. That's when they saw you like in the ring versus like the pre-tape stuff. And then for a part of it, like Ali was the mouthpiece. So I'm hesitant because I'm trying to hope I make sense in
No,
explaining
no, I
like
totally understand.
how much of that is a response to that, or was it always something you just prided yourself on?
When I re-debuted in NXT as Dijak, big, big piece of it,
Mhm.
huge piece of it. A big motivation behind that character was acknowledge that I was T-Bar, explain that we've moved on, and here's the motivation, the reason why, and here's the making up, the penance part of it, and that reflected in ring as well. I wanted just there to be a complete reinvention with an acknowledgement of what happened, but to say this is what's happening moving forward, and here's the new presentation. And I think we did that successfully. I
Yeah.
think we did that very successfully in NXT. Um, Again, there's always going to be rumblings, and I still get T-Bar chants and whatever. And that to me, that's a good thing. When the crowd starts chanting T-Bar, it means okay, they know who I am. They're familiar, right? It's the same as chanting "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks," right? They're all chanting Cena sucks, but they all know who he is, and they're all there for a reason, right? So when the whole crowd mocks at me and chants T-Bar at York Hall in London, I'm thrilled. I go, okay, great. They all hate me because I was T-Bar. Fine. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't, right? That's a good thing. That's good heat. Now they want to see me get beat up because I was in Retribution or whatever.
Mhm.
And if they're having fun making fun of me, fine. That they pay money to have fun. Who cares?
Yeah.
Um, in terms of what I'm doing now, it's still there. That motivation's still there, but to a lesser degree because the right now I'm in the midst of most of what and I touched on this with Chris Van Vliet a little bit,
Mhm.
but I'll try to give you a little bit more depth than I did in that. Um, right now, most of what not all, but most of what I do is catered towards a a very specific fan base, right? If you're going to an independent show, if you're going to a show with me in the main event front and center, you have a general idea, maybe not all the fans, but most of the fans in the crowd have a general idea of who I am, whether it was from Ring of Honor or NXT and they're aware, of course, they're aware of Retribution, but they're aware of me outside of Retribution as well. Whereas if you're exclusively familiar with me from Retribution, that's a lot more of a casual fan. That's and I'm not holding that against them, right? I love casual fans. It's a huge, huge piece of this puzzle that often goes unaccounted for, right?
Yeah.
A lot of wrestlers don't take the casual fan into account, and I think that that's detrimental to us as a product. I think we should take the casual fan into account, which I do. I do in this presentation because I treat everyone as if they have no idea who I am. That's why I have the music. That's why I have the visual. That's why I give everyone this sort of same thing. Now I start all my promos by explaining who I am, what my name is. I learned this from Paul Heyman. Every single one of my promos begins with "Feast your eyes on the Dijak hijack," and just right there you go, okay, feast your eyes. This is his gimmick is intrinsic on the eyes and the visual of the sunglasses, and I do the whole thing there. I say my name, Dijak. Now you know who I am, and then the last thing I close with is that's enough talk. Now it's time to do or die, Jack. So now you've heard my name twice, beginning, end. The crowd is now familiar with me, and they know who my name is, and they have some sort of idea that I'm a Terminator, Punisher, dishing out justice, vigilante, concept, whether that's a good guy or a bad guy, whichever way we're trending it. So I always approach it from that aspect. That being said, where we are now, I'm aware that a the majority of the fan base is at least generally familiar with me as a product outside of Retribution. So I don't have this massive chip on my shoulder as I did in NXT. I just have it's a different chip on my shoulder in terms of proving people wrong, right?
Mm.
Proving whoever, whether it's WWE for their decision that they made, or the naysayers who said, "Oh, he deserves this. He wanted to be a top guy and he doesn't have what it takes to be a top guy." That's fine. If
Mm.
you believe that, that's fine. I've always believed the opposite about myself. I've been very vocal about that, and now is my opportunity to show you that I was correct. So that's how I approach myself from an in-ring standpoint, from a character standpoint, from a presentation standpoint. It's quite frankly, in a way, how I always have, but now there's just a slightly different motivation behind it based on my audience and the majority of what my audience is viewing, if that makes sense and kind of answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's very, I think if anybody ever, and you kind of touched on it, like as far as like people thinking like, oh, we weren't trying to make this succeed or whatever, like you just gave a really deep answer about what your motivations are for a lot of different things. So I appreciate that. But uh I guess if I could put a a positive spin on Retribution as a whole, at least there was a little bit of consistency, at least for your name and the presentation, because one of
Mhm.
the things that always bothered me was like it seemed like you changed your name a lot, especially before that run.
I did.
Like there was a C in your name, there was Dijakovic, I think
Yeah,
you had two first names.
yeah.
Like, how refreshing is it just, being Donovan Dijak again instead of worrying about like all of that part of it?
Um, the so that started with NXT. That with that first meeting with Shawn Michaels and Johnny Russo and Matt Bloom, that's where I brought it to the table. I said, "Look, guys, I've had 8 names. None of these have been my decision. I've just been given stuff and done my best to make it work. I keep being given things because at that point I'd been in the company for 5 or 5.5, 6 years.
Mm.
That's a long time in WWE, and that's an even longer time to be in WWE and have pretty much created nothing from scratch. I'd been given a lot. I'd been given Dominic Dijakovic. I've been given these ideas. Here's T-Bar. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And that I want to make those things succeed because you're my boss, and I'm going to dive headfirst into every single one of them. That being said, here's what I think my best presentation can be, and that's what I gave them, and they accepted it full-fledged. And that's why I'm so happy with my current run because now I'm getting that presentation, but I'm also in very much in control of the wrestling piece of it, which isn't to say that I wasn't in NXT, but there's a lot of constraints that go along with WWE television. That's just the reality of it. No one can escape that. You can't escape, hey, you have a 3-minute match on television. You have to go 3 minutes.
And it
Like
might
what
be
I,
shorter than 3 minutes when we actually get to it.
exactly, exactly. Or you have a pay-per-view match and go knock it out of the park, but don't go over 12 minutes. And it's like, okay, you can only knock it so far out of the park with 12 minutes. Like I'm going to do my best. I'm going to give you the best 12-minute match you've ever seen in your life, but let's call a spade a spade. The best matches in the world are always longer than that. That's just the reality of the current fan perception. Um, so now I'm at a place where I don't have to run my script by someone. I don't have to get this verbiage approved. I don't have to say the words that are being handed to me. Oh, Vince says to say this. Oh, this line is in your. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now they're like, hey, can you touch on this, and this? Yeah, absolutely. And I craft my own promo, and then I go out there and I say, this is how I would say all of these things. I say it. It gets a huge response. I come to the back and they go, hey, that was awesome. That's what I want. That's the way my mind works and the creative freedom that I want with it. And again, right now I'm taking a lot of acting classes, and a big premise of the acting class is, hey, you gotta, it's someone else's vision. You gotta make that your own, right? So I'm all for that. But the reality of this character and this rendition of this character is that I'm the I'm the director of it. I'm the producer of it. I'm the creator of it. So to ask someone else to write for it is disingenuous, in my opinion. In my opinion, I know this character better than anyone. I should be writing for this character. That's my opinion. I'm happy to bounce ideas back and forth, and I love creative meetings and concepts. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to shortchange myself, okay? I'm a damn talented creative artist. And that's how I feel about myself. And if that sounds like I'm being cocky, then you can take that however you want. But I'm extremely confident in myself and all of my friends and everybody in NXT that we are all extremely talented creative artists. And and I think that that should always be a collaborative process where we get the final say within the confines of obviously what's allowed to be said on television and the restrictions of that. But ultimately, I think it leans further uh, in a how do you fit our narrative in terms of storytelling in the WWE system, which is fine. I don't hold that against them. They're a business and they need to make as much money as possible, and I get that. Whereas now it's more of like a how can how can I get myself over as much as I possibly can, and that's now that's my job. So I'm diving headfirst into that version of it. And to me, that's extremely creatively satisfying. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah. And probably say this a lot, but there's something to be said about uh, wisdom coming with age. And I feel like I'm finding that out in real time. Like you are very open about how, okay, WWE is a business. Like here's how this runs, but then you're doing your own thing. Here's how I can run my business. Like that's what it is now. And I think maybe some people like don't understand that or they have to come to that realization like at a certain point in their life. And I think,
Mhm.
you understand that better than like a 22-year-old fan that's like bitching on Twitter about.
I mean, I think so. It's all subjective. I've found personally that what comes a lot for me with age is perspective. And a big, and I learned this directly from Shawn Michaels. I saw it from him probably more than anybody else on this planet. A big, huge part of not just this business, but life is the perspective of the idea that all of this is subjective, right? All of it is subjective. Because I would sit there with, in my opinion, arguably one of, if not the best in-ring performers of all time, and one of, if not the best overall performer of all time, which is Shawn Michaels. I was in his class. We would sit down and we would break down tape of matches, and he would watch me wrestle constantly, and he'd
Mhm.
say, "Well, I don't know, but maybe this would work better at maybe I don't know." And just that, just hearing maybe I don't know from a guy who you'd think, oh no, he knows, like he's that this should be the final answer, but the reality is it's not because none of us know. None of us have the correct answer. No one's the all-telling, all-knowing genius of all things. It if you have the perspective to understand that maybe here's an idea, this might be how it is, here's my best guess, that's when you can start to see more um
You can be a little more insightful on what's going on.
yeah, you have
Instead of
more insight
black
and
and
you can
white.
right, exactly. I think online we all get stuck in this black or white, like it's either this or it's this, or there has to be a reason. I think being open to I'm not sure, or maybe I'll help. Maybe you can help me to find out, or things like that is extremely powerful.
Is there something that I'll wrap on this, and I appreciate your time. Is there something that you want people to talk about more about your career? Because we've already done your history in WWE. We talked a little bit about Retribution, or haven't really talked about ratios much. But anything that maybe you just are, whether it's you're proud of, it doesn't get as much attention, anything you want people to talk about more.
I want people, and I'm seeing this a lot more and more and more, especially from people who see me on these smaller shows. Um, I want people to look at me. I want everybody who's ever seen me wrestle or seen me perform in any capacity or do anything, whether it's acting, whether it's a podcast, whether any of the things that I do creatively, or not even creatively, whether it's philanthropy, my family, any passion of mine. If someone is going to uh, think about me, I want them to know that I've given it 100%, that I've given it my all. And I think I'm seeing a lot more. And again, a big medium of mine is Twitter, but I see it at the merch table where I get to talk and interact with people on a personal level.
Mhm.
I just want everyone to know that I've never taken a day off in my life in terms of like, of course, I've gone on vacation and stuff like that, but in terms of like
You're not
when
mailing the
I'm
shit.
in the ring, I've never once stepped in foot into a ring or stepped into a promotion or cut a promo without my 100% dedication to how can I make this the best experience humanly possible for everyone that this matters to. And I've always taken that approach. It's why you see me doing all sorts of crazy spots, even if it's only 20 people in the crowd. I just don't care. This is my craft. This is what I'm paid to do. It's my job to put on the best performance possible. It's what I'm always going to do. And that transcends everything that I do in my life. And I hope that one day people see that because some people see it and some people don't. Some people think that I just, you know,
Show up and look badass.
yeah, yeah, or whatever thing enters their mind, or there's a preconceived notion about. I want you to know that I don't care what the medium is, and I don't care who the viewer is or who the audience is. I'm always going to give 100%, and that's what I want to define me as a human being.
You've got Timothy Thatcher at MLW Fightland on September 14th. Any other appearances? Anything you want to plug or promote before I close it out?
I mean, I got a ton of appearances. I'm in Excite in XCITE Excite
Mhm.
in the Binghamton area in New York, and then on Sunday I'm doing a charity show in Connecticut. Both of those are going to be great as well, and then I'm flying to Georgia in between those two for MLW. Super excited about that. Me and Tim haven't wrestled in 7 years, so that'll be awesome. I'm excited all around. Everything is super exciting right now. There's a ton of creative freedom, and it really just it's exactly what I love about the business of professional wrestling. So all of it is very exciting for me.